Hi, Host Eric here. I am going to position in this episode of Talking with Famous People what Tanner is doing right now is being completely wrong. Now, he says that what we were just doing was not really debating because I wasn't really listening. And this is something I'm sometimes accused of. And usually the reason is pretty simple. Now, I'm not saying it's the reason in this case, which is why I think this one's interesting. Usually the reason I'm accused of not listening is because you start saying the first few words of your argument, I know the whole argument chain already, and so I bust right through to the end and just go like, no, and this is why. But that's not the case here, and so I'm curious to hear why you think that wasn't actually debating.
Just to clarify here, you're saying what wasn't the case is that you knew the whole argument chain and so you just blew through it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's exactly why I was saying that's why I'm highlighting the fact that you weren't listening, is because you were unsure of where the line of argumentation was going and then decided, though, to interject anyway.
No.
So when I say, like, you weren't... Well, yeah.
If I interject there, right, you made your point that I was not really listening because I didn't know exactly where the argument chain was going, but I interjected anyway. If I decide to interject there, like I'm doing now, that's not what I'm talking about. That's not anticipating a whole argument chain and going to the end of it. This is me saying, okay, let's pause the argument chain because there's no reason to go any further until you establish this one, right? That's fair. That's just. I expect you to do the same with mine. So my point is, no, that's not true.
It's not true that you just kept blowing through my argument chain.
Correct. It's true that I stopped you part way in the argument chain and said we can't go further, and there's no point in going further if the rest of the chain is dependent upon this. Now,
yeah.
remember,
So had you said that, I think had you said that, the discussion would have went very differently. But you never actually said that.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of things. This is a technique you've used a couple of times now, so I'm going to call you on and explain it. There's a lot of things I didn't say. If you're trying to establish a claim right now that somehow I wasn't arguing well or correctly in the last time, there's a lot of things you didn't say either. You might say, well, I didn't have an opportunity, Eric, because you interjected and spoke. Well, we both spoke, and neither of us had the opportunity to say everything that could have been said. Now, it's not my job to establish every possible justification, to anticipate every possible response from you. Instead, it's your job to either make those responses, establish your positions, or otherwise move the negation forward.
Yeah, totally. So then, for me, the reason why that wasn't allowed to happen, and this is why I said, I didn't say you weren't arguing well. What I said was you weren't listening. And I see the reason why I say that is because I see it as the source of the reason why, for example, I didn't get to develop a particular line of reasoning. That, as you already said, was one that you weren't really sure of.
But
you didn't really know.
Okay, number one, I clearly am listening because I'm responding to everything you say, and I clearly was then because I was responding directly to what you said. That's the indication of listening. Number two, you just went back to the point that I already just stopped, right? So you made a point previously that said I wasn't listening because I admitted I didn't know where the argument chain was going. That's why I was listening, because I didn't know where the argument chain was going, and that's why I stopped you and interjected periodically. I've already countered that point. You went back to it and repeated the same point as though I hadn't countered it.
No, because back to that point, I'm using it when I say you're not listening. So yeah, so here's one consequence of that. Here's one rhetorical line that follows from that, and you did counter that. That's fine. But now I'm pulling it back and I'm saying, no, hold on. I'm still. The point remains that in your trying to counter it, you've brought up some additional things, and I say, well, yeah, and one of those things was you, Tanner, also didn't really bring up a particular line of reasoning, and you could have, but neither of us really did. And I'm just saying, yeah, and I think part of
No, I didn't say that. My point is that there are infinite possible things you could have said, and you were necessarily only going to say some of them. To point out after the fact things that I didn't say as reasons why I wasn't listening is incorrect, inaccurate,
but I wasn't
false.
bringing up what you didn't say at all.
Yes, you were. Multiple times. You said you could have said this, but you didn't. You could have said this, but you didn't. I would have understood a lot more if you had said this.
No,
you said that multiple fucking times. You said that fucking multiple times. You said, well, I would have understood a lot better if right off the bat you had told me blah, 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 blah. You said that shit like 3 or 4 times.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so look, those kind of statements where you're saying the problem here lies in what you did not say or explain, right?
That's starting
indicative
this
of
video.
What? What's that indicative of? My failure to listen or what?
So what's happening right now is that you're crossing, in my mind, you are crossing two of my reference frames. No, but I can't, because you're talking about something that happened in the last video, which is that I continued to say to you, like, I wish you'd tell me what your principles were, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, true. But now you're applying it to this particular moment when I'm talking about whether or not
Because
you're
we're
listening.
talking about whether I was listening in the last video.
Right. What I'm saying is that my motivation to say that you weren't listening in the last video had nothing to do with what you didn't say. Like that just has nothing to do with this.
Okay, then
So-
what
so
is your
let me tell
reason
you.
for me
Yeah,
not
exactly.
listening?
No, right.
But the first thing you
My
said,
reason for saying that.
stop. The first thing you said, the first reason you gave me was the thing that we just discussed, okay? So that's why it went there, because that was the reason you gave me. Now give me
The reason I
another
gave
reason.
you-
Give me a new
the
reason.
reason
Go
I
ahead.
What was the first reason I gave you?
That I clearly wasn't listening because I didn't know where the argument chains were going. That whole fucking argument we just had, that you continue to dispute.
Yeah, but me saying that doesn't say. So hold on, no, so I agree with that, which is that you weren't listening, and it had to do with interjecting among argument chains.
I explained it. I
But
countered
now
it.
you're.
And
But
then
now,
what?
no, but right, but you interpreted it in terms of things that you weren't saying, which I never brought up. Like I didn't. So let me I'm going to make my point again, which I think you see as like poor debating, but I'm making it again because I feel like it's as though it's not being interpreted.
Go ahead.
properly.
Go ahead.
So, when I said you weren't listening, it is an attempt of mine to highlight that the discourse did not advance cooperatively or in a dialogue because the anticipations you were making in the form of like assuming that you knew where the rhetoric was going, things like that, precluded that from happening. But I didn't mean to like highlight it like what you weren't saying or whatever. That was a separate request I made of you, right? Which is like you're not saying what you believe in or what your tenets are or whatever. But that was just me trying to get a sense of like how can I have a collaborative, and it doesn't mean we have to agree, but how can I understand where Eric's coming from?
Okay. So let me demonstrate something, and then I'm going to ask you to demonstrate it back. Okay. So what you just said to me was that I was not listening because I didn't promote a dialogue moving forward that was engaging both parties' ideas in a way that was positive or something. You didn't include that part in what you said.
No, true to both. No, because it's not about the positivity. It's about it is about whether the dialogue was true to the positions of both people.
Okay, well, now, what I pointed out is that fundamentally is necessarily linked to your point about not saying certain things. You're saying it can't be true to both people because you didn't have a chance to say enough stuff. It's not true to me because you didn't hear all of my positions, and yada, yada, yada. Well, the point is, we can't deliver onto each other in a single whole dump the whole truths of our respective positions on things. So we have only the flow. All we have is the flow. The flow is the record of our existing discourse. Now,
Yeah, so
that should not be
those
critiqued on what was not said. It's
No, exactly, which is why I'm still asserting that you weren't listening, not based on what you weren't saying, as I've said before, but based on what you were saying. Because what you started to say, and you got very heated, right, is in your saying of these things, weren't addressing my rhetoric.
You're scrambling. You're scrambling.
No,
okay,
because
look, here we go. So you're saying I'm not, okay, give me an example. Let's be concrete. Let's be precise. Which example of which rhetoric wasn't I addressing?
Like when I asked about why shame, and why not outline the rules of your system. That's kind of and I don't have a good memory. Because as you say, all we have this is the flow. But that is when I remember the first time that you kind of just went on a massive tangent away from the discussion, and it was now all about like your particular convictions and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that.
You asked me if I had them, remember? That you have to have a specific framework, you said? I said, I have one. This is what it is. Remember?
Yeah, but it also was, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Though it doesn't, though that's also not the problem I'm raising, right? Which is just that then it comes to the point where now I am going to respond to it or engage in it, and that is what I experience to be continually truncated. I think.
Have I not given you an opportunity to express exactly what you think, including the fact that I'm truncating your ability to express?
I suppose yes, and I suppose it's not on you though. That's not. I don't mean to say like you've cut me off, but when I say like your interjections truncate my speaking or train of thought, I just mean it in terms of like what actually is happening, and as a result, yeah, I think like I probably haven't shared where I was coming from. And a lot of the reasons why I then opted to ask questions instead of continue to make assertions is because I felt as though there was a disconnect in what I was being anticipated to say and what I actually wanted to say. So my method of asking questions was trying to basically decode what is it that you're expecting me to say, where do you think I am in this, so that I can speak that language. And
you're not giving yourself enough credit. You are not giving yourself enough credit. The thing is, in that conversation, I did not know where you were going, and I was not going to let you get there. I was not going to let you get there on anything that was squishy, because I wasn't sure where you were going. If I knew where you were going, it would have been a different matter entirely.
So what do you mean I wasn't giving myself enough credit?
I'm saying I would have, if I knew you were going to hang yourself with the rope, I would have given you plenty of rope, right? But the thing is, what I need to do was make sure where you're going. I had to figure out where you were going. So that's why I have to stop you and say, ask you questions in return, right? And you want to be able to be the person who's positioned as the one who's removed, distant, and asking the questions, the anthropologist in the equation. But neither of us get to be the anthropologist. Not around here, because your anthropology will get thrown into the trash heap, and I'll get mad about it, and then I'll get a little lecture about how I got heated. Well, fuck your heat. I don't care. Heat's good. Heat's good. Heat is what engages people.
I suppose, and what I'm saying though is that it's not necessarily good. Well, I think we'd both say it's not good or bad. And what I'm saying is that it undermined what I think was the actual premise, which was to actually debate.
I think it's a good thing if it's a naturally occurring consequence of somebody trying to not, you see, you position it as I was not allowing the debate to go forward. I position it as you were not allowing the debate to go forward because you were avoiding answering my questions. I answer all your questions directly. I don't avoid any of them.
Yeah, and then the challenge for me is that the questions you ask cross reference frames of my own. It doesn't mean that they're erroneous from where you're asking them. But what I'm saying is that
we defined that. We defined that vector. That's public policy. That was already defined.
Right, and then at that point, actually, we agreed. Right.
So it wasn't crossing frames of reference.
And so when I say that they were, I'm speaking to the moments preceding that, where you perceived me to be not.
I can see that point.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Let's end on an agreement then. That's a good place to end. Thanks for watching Talking with Famous People.